There's a silent epidemic affecting 78% of professionals earning over $5,000 per month in the United States. They have successful careers, diplomas on the wall, but they're living in the red. And the reason isn't what you think. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what psychology has discovered about why you earn well but you're still broke. I know what you're thinking. It's obvious, it's lack of discipline, I spend too much. But researchers at Cambridge University spent 12 years studying the financial behavior of over 40,000 people and discovered something disturbing. It's not about discipline. It's about invisible psychological patterns that were programmed into your mind before you were 7 years old. And until you understand these patterns, you can read every personal finance book in the world and nothing will change. First, we'll understand the mechanism, then I'll show you exactly how it operates in your life without you noticing, and at the end, there's a revelation about money that will make everything make sense. Let's start with a thought experiment. Think about how much you earned 5 years ago. Now think about how much you earn today. Your income probably at least doubled, right? So tell me something, why doesn't your bank account reflect that? Why aren't you twice as rich? In 2019, behavioral economist Dan Ariely conducted a fascinating study. He followed 500 professionals for 8 years, from when they earned their first salary until they tripled their income. You know what happened? Only 3% of them managed to accumulate wealth proportional to their income increase. 97% simply inflated their lifestyle at the same speed their salaries grew. This has a name, lifestyle creep. And here's what's scary, it's not a conscious choice. It's an automatic, invisible psychological mechanism that happens on your brain's autopilot. When you earned $3,000, that $150 restaurant was an impossible luxury. Today you earn $12,000, and suddenly that same restaurant became just a normal dinner. What changed? The restaurant's price? No. The value you attribute to money. And this is controlled by a primitive part of your brain called the reward system, which is constantly recalibrating what's normal based on your current context. And there's something even more sinister happening here, something financial psychologists call the deserved compensation illusion. But before I explain that, you need to understand how your brain sabotages you through a trick called hedonic anchoring. In 1978, a group of psychologists conducted a study that completely changed our understanding of happiness and money. They interviewed lottery winners 18 months after their win. You know what the average happiness level of these people was? Exactly the same as before winning. Some even reported feeling less happy. This happens because of a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. Your brain is a normalization machine. Any new level of pleasure or comfort, no matter how extraordinary, becomes your new normal within weeks. It's like when you buy a new car. In the first days, you feel that euphoria every time you get in it. 3 months later, it's just the car that takes you to work. Here's the problem, your brain normalizes pleasure quickly, but it doesn't normalize the cost. You get used to the $4,000 apartment, but you continue to feel the pain of having to pay for it. You adapt to the new iPhone, but the installment on your card keeps hurting. It's a brutal asymmetry. And that's where the deserved compensation illusion comes in. You know that thought that goes through your head when you close a big client or get a promotion? I deserve to treat myself, I worked hard. That's not you talking. It's your reward system hijacked by consumer culture. Financial psychologist Kathleen Gurney discovered that 89% of high-income professionals have a behavioral pattern called the reward-spend cycle. Translating, you work hard, feel stressed, your brain asks for a reward, you spend money, feel temporary relief, go back to working hard to pay for what you spent, get stressed again, and the cycle restarts. It's a psychological hamster wheel. But wait. Why did you specifically fall into this trap? Why do some people manage to escape and others don't? The answer lies in the first 7 years of your life, and this is where things get really deep. There's a concept in financial psychology called money scripts. They're unconscious beliefs about money that were programmed into your mind during childhood, based on what you saw, heard, and felt about money in your early years. And these beliefs control 100% of your adult financial behavior, even if you're never aware of them. Dr. Brad Klontz, financial psychologist and professor at Creighton University, identified 4 main categories of dysfunctional money scripts. I'll show you each one and you'll recognize yourself in at least one of them. Money script number 1, money is for spending, because the future is uncertain. If you grew up in a family that went through financial instability, that lived paycheck to paycheck, your child brain learned a brutal lesson: the future is unpredictable and you can lose everything at any moment. So the survival strategy your unconscious created was, if you have money now, enjoy it now, because tomorrow it might not be here. That's why you feel a strange anxiety when you see money sitting in your account. Your primitive brain interprets idle money as wasted opportunity. This isn't irrationality. It's a defense mechanism created by a child who saw their father lose his job or their mother crying because she didn't have money for food. Money script number 2, I don't deserve to have money. This is the cruelest one. If you grew up hearing phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, rich people are dishonest, we'll never have that, your brain created an association. Having money equals being a bad person or betraying your origins. So, unconsciously, every time you start accumulating money, you self-sabotage. You spend, you lose, you donate beyond what you can afford, you forget to charge clients. All of this to keep your identity aligned with the programming: people like me don't have money. Financial therapist Amanda Clayman treats executives who earn $50,000, $60,000 a month and still feel guilty about buying new clothes. Because deep down, that child who was raised with little still believes they don't deserve it. Money script number 3, more money will solve all my problems. This is the opposite of the previous one. If you grew up seeing your parents fighting over money, or seeing that, when we have money things will get better, you developed a magical belief: money equals solution to all problems. So you chase money obsessively, but when you get it, you realize your emotional, relational, existential problems are still there. And what do? You chase more money, thinking, when I earn X, then everything will be fine. Spoiler, it never is. Money script number 4, status is survival. This one is the most common among high-income professionals. If you grew up in an environment where appearance and status were constantly emphasized, where love and approval were conditional on your performance, you learned that being seen as successful equals safety. So you spend money to perform success, even when you don't have it. Designer clothes, impressive car, expensive restaurants, Instagrammable trips. None of this is about pleasure. It's about maintaining the illusion that you're in control, that you're valuable. Here's the question you need to ask yourself now: which of these scripts is running in your brain without you noticing? And more importantly, how do you break it? Because knowing the problem doesn't solve the problem. We need to go deeper. Beyond money scripts, there are cognitive biases, systematic thinking errors, that make you make terrible financial decisions thinking they're rational. I'll show you the 3 most destructive ones. Bias number 1, mental accounting. Your brain doesn't treat all money the same way. Money you earned extra, a bonus, a tax refund, a freelance gig, seems less valuable than money from your regular salary. So you spend this extra money much more easily. It's as if your brain created separate mental accounts and treated each one with different rules. Economist Richard Thaler won the Nobel Prize for studying this. He showed that people are much more careful with $100 from their salary than with $100 from a prize, even though it's exactly the same money. And then you receive that year-end bonus and decide to spend it all because it's extra money, when in reality that money could have changed your financial situation. Bias number 2, asymmetric loss aversion. Studies show that the pain of losing $100 is psychologically twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $100. Sounds good, right? You'd take better care of your money. But here's the problem: this makes you make irrational decisions to avoid the feeling of loss. For example, you keep paying for that gym you don't use because canceling feels like losing the money you invested. You maintain that streaming subscription you don't watch because canceling is admitting you wasted money. You don't sell that stock that's losing value because selling is realizing the loss. So you keep bleeding money to avoid the psychological pain of admitting you lost. Bias number 3, hyperbolic discounting of the future. Your brain values the present much more than the future. And it's not a linear proportion. A Princeton University study showed that people prefer to receive $100 today rather than $150 in 6 months, even though it's a 50% return in half a year. Your brain literally discounts the value of the future dramatically. That's why you know you should save 20% of your salary for retirement, but you can't. Your future self, the one who will need that money in 30 years, seems like an abstract character, almost fictional. But today's you, who wants to dine out, is real and immediate. So every month you choose the present and let the future figure itself out. And here's the cruelest part, this bias is especially strong in people who had unstable childhoods. If you grew up without security, your brain learned that the future is too unpredictable to be worth investing in. So you get stuck in a cycle. Difficult childhood creates hyperbolic discounting, which creates financial difficulty in adult life, which creates difficult childhood for your children. It's an intergenerational cycle. So far you've understood the money scripts that program your behavior and the cognitive biases that distort your decisions. But there's an even deeper layer I need to show you. One that explains why you know all this but still can't change. Neuroscientist Kelly McGonigal made a disturbing discovery: compulsive spending behavior doesn't start in your mind. It starts in your body. Specifically, in your autonomic nervous system. When you're stressed, anxious, or emotionally dysregulated, your nervous system enters survival mode. In this state, the rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and self-control, literally goes offline. It's shut down. And the limbic system, the primitive part of the brain that seeks immediate pleasure and quick relief, takes control. That's why you get home after a stressful day at work and, without thinking, open the delivery app and order expensive food. Or go to the e-commerce site and buy things you don't need. It's not lack of willpower. You're literally in a physiological state where the part of your brain that makes rational decisions is deactivated. Psychologist Susan Weinschenk explains this with a perfect metaphor. Imagine your brain as a car with 2 drivers. The rational driver, prefrontal cortex, is careful, thinks long-term, follows the rules. The emotional driver, limbic system, wants pleasure now, immediate relief, instant gratification. When you're rested and emotionally regulated, the rational driver is in control. But when you're stressed, tired, hungry, anxious, the emotional driver takes the wheel. And he doesn't care about your financial goals. And here's the vicious cycle. Financial problems cause chronic stress. Chronic stress deactivates your self-control. Lack of self-control causes more impulsive spending. More impulsive spending causes more financial problems. It's a neurophysiological downward spiral. But it gets worse. Spending money releases dopamine in your brain. It's the same neurotransmitter released by drugs, sex, sugary food. So when you buy something, you get a dose of dopamine, a momentary sensation of pleasure and relief. Your brain registers this: stress plus purchase equals relief. And this creates a conditioned pattern. Over time, buying becomes your automatic emotional regulation strategy. This explains why you can read 10 finance books, watch 100 videos, make 50 spreadsheets, and still, when you're emotionally dysregulated, none of it matters. Because intellectual knowledge doesn't change automatic physiological patterns. So the real question isn't, how do I control my spending? The question is, how do I regulate my nervous system so the rational part of my brain can function? And this is where we get to the solution. But the solution isn't what you expect. Most people try to solve financial problems with financial strategies, budgeting, cutting expenses, using spreadsheets. And this fails 94% of the time. Because the problem isn't financial. It's psychological and physiological. Here's the approach that actually works, based on 40 years of research in behavioral psychology. Step 1. Conscious identification of triggers. You need to start noticing what happens before you spend money impulsively. Not what you buy, but what you were feeling, thinking, doing immediately before. For 2 weeks, every time you make an unplanned purchase, write down what time it was, what you were doing before, how you were feeling emotionally, what had happened in your day. You'll discover patterns. Maybe you always spend after stressful meetings. Or on days you fight with someone. Or when you feel lonely at night. Or when you see someone on social media with something you don't have. These are your triggers. And you can't change what you don't see. Step 2. Nervous system regulation practices. Before any purchase, you need to return to a regulated physiological state. And there are proven techniques for this. Diaphragmatic breathing for 90 seconds activates your vagus nerve and shuts down the stress response. Walking for 10 minutes redistributes blood flow from the limbic system back to the prefrontal cortex. Waiting 24 hours between the impulse to buy and the actual purchase gives time for the rational driver to return to control. The golden rule: never make financial decisions in extreme emotional states. Anger, sadness, euphoria, anxiety, all these states shut down your rational judgment. If you're feeling an intense emotion, the financial decision needs to wait. Step 3. Rewriting money scripts. Remember the unconscious scripts that were programmed in your childhood? You can't erase them, but you can create stronger new scripts. And the way to do this isn't through empty positive affirmations. It's through corrective experiences. If you have the script, "I don't deserve to have money," you need to create small, repeated experiences where you save money and nothing bad happens. Start with $50. You save it, observe the anxiety appear, and consciously choose not to spend. You survive. Your brain registers, "I can have money and still be me." Then you increase to $100, $200, $500. Over time, you create a new neurological pattern. If you have the script, "status is survival," you need to create experiences where you receive validation and genuine connection without spending money. Vulnerability with true friends. Hobbies that cost nothing but bring pride. Community contributions that aren't financial. Your brain needs to learn that safety doesn't come from appearance, it comes from real connection. Step 4. Ritualization of financial decisions. Your brain loves rituals. Rituals create predictability, and predictability creates a sense of control. So you create a specific ritual for financial decisions. It could be, before any purchase over $200, you sit in a specific place, breathe 10 times, and answer 3 questions. Does this solve a real problem I have? Will I still want this in 30 days? Is this aligned with the person I want to become? The ritual isn't about the answers. It's about creating a conscious pause between impulse and action. It's about reactivating the rational driver of your brain before letting the emotional driver make the purchase. But there's one last element that makes all the difference. An element that separates people who manage to change from those who stay stuck in the same patterns forever. And it has to do with something psychologists call identity narrative. Here's an uncomfortable truth: you won't change your financial behavior until you change who you believe you are. Because all behavior is a way of expressing and confirming identity. If deep down you identify as someone who's bad with money, then every time you try to save, you're acting out of character. It's like an actor trying to do a scene that's not in the script. It's uncomfortable, forced, unsustainable. So eventually you return to the behavior that's congruent with your identity: spending, being broke, living on the edge. Author James Clear explains this perfectly: the most powerful behavior change doesn't come from having different goals, but from having a different identity. Instead of, I want to save $5,000, you change to, I'm the type of person who values financial security. Instead of, I need to stop spending so much, you change to, I'm someone who makes conscious decisions about money. So how do you rebuild identity? Through small, consistent votes in favor of the new identity. Every time you choose not to make that impulsive purchase, you're voting in favor of the identity, I'm someone who has financial self-control. Every time you save $100, even if it's difficult, you're voting in favor of the identity, I'm someone who plans for the future. At first, the votes are fragile. 1 vote in favor, 2 votes against. But with consistency, the balance starts to shift. 10 votes in favor. 50 votes in favor. 200 votes in favor. And eventually you reach a point where the new identity becomes your truth. You're not trying to save. You are someone who saves. You're not forcing control. You are someone who has control. And here's the most powerful part, when your identity changes, the effort disappears. Because you're no longer fighting against yourself. You're simply being who you are. But there's a fundamental prerequisite for this to work, self-compassion. If you judge yourself, shame yourself, criticize yourself every time you fail, you're reinforcing the old identity, I'm bad with money, I'll never change. But if you treat each mistake as information, each relapse as part of the learning process, you keep the door open for transformation. Researcher Kristin Neff spent 20 years studying self-compassion and discovered that people who practice self-compassion are 60% more likely to change destructive behaviors than people who use self-criticism. Because self-compassion creates psychological safety, and you only change when you feel safe to fail and try again. So here's the final revelation, the answer to the question from the beginning, why do you earn well but you're always broke? It's not because you're irresponsible. It's not because you don't know basic math. It's because no one ever taught you that money isn't a financial problem, it's an emotional, psychological, and physiological problem. Your relationship with money is a mirror of your relationship with yourself, with your childhood, with your emotions, with your identity. And the good news? All these patterns can be changed. Not overnight. Not without effort. But they can. Because you're not broken. You're operating with old software that no longer serves you. And now you know where the code is. If you recognized at least one of these patterns in your life, you just took the first step, awareness. And awareness is always the beginning of change. Leave a comment down below telling me which money script you most identified with. Which unconscious script you realized is running in your brain. Because naming is the first step to transforming. And if you want to continue diving into this psychology of money, the next video I'm releasing is about why you self-sabotage every time you're close to a financial achievement. It's a pattern that 67% of people have and don't notice. It's going to be revealing. For now, take a deep breath. You're not the problem. The system is. And now you know the system.